I'm KT Bradford of Liliputing.com, and this is my short video review of the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition tablet from Samsung. This tablet retails for $550. It boasts an ultra-high resolution display and an octa-core processor, that means 8, and also a pretty nifty pen. So just going to go over some of the nice aspects of this tablet, why it is that I would recommend it for some people, why I might not recommend it for others, and this S Pen has a lot to do with that. Let's start with going over some of the basic design elements of this tablet. So this is the second generation of the Galaxy Tab 10-inch version. The first generation is here, and I'll just pop that in front real quick for you. And one of the big things to notice is that the second generation got a lot smaller. So there they are. There's this one on top of the other one. It's definitely narrower here, a little less tall here, and it's a bit thinner. It's about 0.3 inches thin at this point. So one of the reasons why it's not as thick is because there's no speakers on the side. Instead, the speakers are here on the edge. And overall, Samsung just made the entire chassis pretty compact, which is very nice. The other major change between this and the last version is that now there are buttons, hardware buttons on here, just like Samsung has on their phones. And so that's been a long-standing thing on Samsung phones, that they are not getting rid of the buttons, even though Android technically does not need them anymore. And that is because well, Samsung just feels that people do like having hardware buttons, and these are all multi-function buttons. If you tap them, they do one thing. If you long press them, they do another. But I think that the major thing to note about having buttons on a tablet with a pen is that this makes it a lot less frustrating to use. When you're dealing with Android that has the bottom bar, it's usually sitting along here, and it changes with the orientation. Even if the app has really good palm rejection when you're writing with a pen, that bottom bar sometimes can still be a problem. And if you hit it with the heel of your palm while you're writing, like you're doing this, and you accidentally brush it, you could end up, looking at recent apps, going back to the home. It's very frustrating. So having physical buttons on one side of the device means that if I'm writing and I, accidentally hit one of those buttons, I can just turn the orientation around like this. And now those buttons are not in my way. And of course, if you're using it in portrait, same deal. So that is really important on a tablet that has a pen. You can argue all you want about how it's ruining the purity of Android on any other tablet, but on a tablet with a pen, this is actually really crucial to giving you a really good experience of writing with the pen. So kudos to Samsung for that. The edge is this little chrome band here. Some people don't like it. They feel that it looks chintzy or whatever. I think it looks fine. Couple other things to note. It's got the infrared port up here, and that's for using it as a universal remote. Very important for some people. The Wacom app is actually really cool, and since a lot of people keep these in their lap while they're watching TV, having it be the remote, also pretty nice. S Pen port is here. This back is a sort of faux leather looking plastic, matte plastic, which is at least, less easy to let it slip out of your hands because it is matte. And it has like the stitching on the edges that Samsung is trying to evoke a notebook, a fine notebook. And some people, again, not too fond of that. I say it looks fine to me. A megapixel camera on the back here. There's a 2 megapixel camera on the front. As I said, the speakers are here on the edges, and even though they're not facing towards you because they're facing out, you're still going to get some pretty good sound quality out of them. And there's micro SD card slot here on the other edge, and that takes up to 64 gigabyte cards. Alright, so that's the hardware aspects. As I said, there's an octa-core processor in here. There's 3 gigabytes of RAM, and that is for the multitasking, and that is going to become very important in just a little bit. But of course, what we're really here to talk about is the S Pen and how it's going to make this tablet more appealing to those of you who are searching. So as you see, when I pulled out the S Pen from its port, I got this little circular menu here called Air Command. And Air Command has 5 different quick apps that you can access, most of them having to do with the pen. So we're going to talk about Action Memo first in relation to S Note, which we're going to get to right now. S Note got a bit of a makeover for the 2014 edition. And so it looks a little different from before, but essentially it actually works about the same. Let's start up a new note here. So here's the, your note palette, and essentially all you do is just write on the note. As you can see, the actual strokes that show up on the screen pretty much kept up with my strokes on the pen, and I found that this to be pretty responsive. So writing with this pen is really nice because it feels more like writing with pen on paper. It doesn't feel exactly like that, but it doesn't feel like writing with a piece of plastic on a piece of glass, which is actually what you're doing. So you want to have a good pen experience, writing smooth lines, go smoothly across the page so that you can, write the way you normally write. And this pen is really good for that. Another thing I want to note about the pen that I didn't mention before is that the Samsung changed the shape, so now it's a uniform shape all around, so that when you put it into the port, it can go into the port either way, whereas before there was only one way to put this pen in the port. So I like that. Alright, so back to this. Just as before, you can take your handwritten notes and you can make them into editable text. You can also make them into a shape or a formula. Formula is really good for math students, obviously. And as you can see, it actually was able to translate my not perfect handwriting and turn it into this nice piece of editable text, which you can then export or just leave an S Note or whatever. Another great thing about the new S Note, discard that, is that now when you search within S Note, you can actually search for words that you wrote by hand and not just words that are typed. So let's search for the word Egypt. A notebook with the word Egypt in the title, but then it also found all these other instances of the word Egypt, and that's all handwritten notes. So it's able to, again, transcribe my horrible chain scratch, but it was able to recognize that word on the title of the note and within the note, and it does this for any word that I might want to search for. The handwriting recognition on this is actually pretty good. Another bit of interesting handwriting recognition comes in the Samsung keyboard. This is the keyboard that comes with the tablet, and it has a handwriting component. And again, it's actually really good at interpreting what I'm writing. Now, I didn't have to train it to recognize any of, my writings. This software that is behind this, now that it works, is actually really, really good at just interpreting writing. I've handed this off to a couple of other people. They've also been able to just, write and have it be pretty accurate. It's not 100% accurate, but the error rate is very low. And I found that to be true with almost all of the Galaxy Note phones and tablets, and this is just an improvement on that. So that is really good, and this allows you to bring handwriting into any app you want. This doesn't just work in S Note, it works across all apps because it's just the standard keyboard. It's a choice among the keyboards. You can also choose, obviously, the voice keyboard, the regular keyboard, floating keyboard, always nice. So yes, it's the handwriting recognition on this quite good. It's one of the reasons why you have a pen for a tablet of this nature, and I'm really glad that that works outside of S Note and the other Samsung apps. As I mentioned, there's another note-taking app on here. It's called Action Memo, and the way to get to that is to either go to Air Command, which you can get by pulling the pen out of its port, or you can hold on to this side button and hover and it'll bring it up, or you can just tap the app icon. Anyway, Action Memo is different from S Memo in that it's more designed for very quick notes. Before, when you had S Memo, you know, if you wrote like quick notes in there, which Samsung encouraged you to do, it would get really unmanageable really quickly. You'd have like a bunch of like little short notes in there and then some long form notes and notebooks, and so Samsung sort of separated the two out. So with Action Memo, this is more for your sort of posted type notes. It's like somebody called you on the phone and they say, oh, please call like Jane. Call Jane at this number. And so you write that down, you can save it. You could also link it to some action. So if you hit this button up here, it will automatically find some stuff, but you can also do a little circle around it. But then now it's identified that, you know, this is what I've written in the note, and I can either turn it into a contact. If it's an email address, I can start emailing people. If it's a web address, I can go right to the browser. An address, I can go right to the map. Or if it's a task, it becomes something, and you can add reminders and stuff to it. You can add images to your Action Memo. You can erase, draw, you know, all the stuff that you would normally do with just sort of like a post-it note, etc. And what's really nice about this is that you can minimize this Action Memo so that it just sits over here in a corner. These little floating icons. And if you need to go back to it, if you need to reference it a lot, it is right there. Or you can just save it for later, and then you'll see the whole row of Action Memos. They all look kind of like post-it notes. So that's what it looks like in the actual Action Memo interface. You can, again, search through here. Handwriting recognition will recognize your words if it can. And this is a really great sort of a companion to S Note because, again, if you separate the sort of little jotty post-it type notes from your long form notes, it's actually much better for finding stuff and organizing in the end, because otherwise you have to keep on top of it quite a bit. So I do like, even though it seems overcomplicated, it seems like too many things, I do like Action Memo. The other pen-enabled apps under the Air Command includes scrapbooking, ScreenWrite, and Pen Window. The S Finder, this is just a quick way to get to it, but it doesn't really have anything to do specifically with the pen. This is just for searching on the tablet through different apps and everything for the stuff that you're looking for. It's quite nice. I want to talk about Pen Window really quickly because Pen Window, even though it's kind of a cool idea, it involves a lot of steps to do what it does. So if you click Pen Window, you can draw on the screen to open an app that's going to hover over other apps. And you can draw any size square that you want, and then these are the apps that you can put in that little square. I'll just choose Calculator, and it will show up in roughly the size that you drew. Sometimes if you draw like a really crazy size, it'll get close. So with each of these little windows, these pen windows, you can move them around the screen. You can also minimize them, like you could Action Memo. There we go. And then they become little floating icons. They look a little bit like Facebook chat heads. And you can dock it over here or anywhere on the screen that you want. And then if you need it again, you just tap it. Well, I like this idea in general. And this is sort of an evolution of the little pop-up apps that Samsung had in the dock down here when they had the dock with the home and back and whatever. it takes a lot to get to this. It's a lot of clicking, and I'm not really all that fond of that. So another thing about the pen windows is that the little icon things just can get in your way more than you think they would. But then again, you can always close them. And the last thing having to do with multitasking I want to go into is the multi-window thing, which this is not new for this particular tablet, but what is new about it is that there are more apps that live in here now, and you can create your own custom app pairing. So I created one where I want to use Maps with Chrome together, and so I can just drag this over here and they'll both open. So you've got Maps, you've got Google Chrome. These windows are now resizable, which is super useful, and then you can just make them both go away by going back to the home screen. So you can create, a number of different pairings if you want, and then of course you can add and subtract what is over here, and all within this little area. So the multi-window thing is really nice for productivity. Being able to work in one window while you're looking at something in another is, of course, something that we've been able to do on Windows for a really long time, and now we can do it on Android tablets, or at least this Android tablet. And I like that a lot. Again, for productivity, it's a really good tool. Some of the other apps included for the pen are the Sketchbook, which is really nice if you're drawing. There's Scrapbook. And then Samsung just has a load of apps that go on here. Knox is of particular interest to business people because this is going to separate your business from your personal stuff. Really nice. When you have things like this multi-window function, and then the pen windows, so you have apps sitting on top of apps, that's going to take a toll on performance. One of the things I noticed about this tablet is that at first the performance was noticeably laggy in some areas. It wasn't laggy all the time, but particularly when we were doing the multitasking stuff, noticed that there was some lag, and that was a problem. That was actually a problem that plagued the first Galaxy Note tablet, and that, it got better over time, but it would be really nice if Samsung could release these things and then just have them be out of the box working exactly correctly. But Samsung has updated this 3 times. They've sent 3 over-the-air updates for this tablet, and each one has made the performance a bit better. It's still not exactly as zippy as I would expect from something that has 8 cores to work with, but it is also no longer frustrating when apps won't open quickly, and with moving in between like multi-windows and etc. So it's definitely getting better. The first generation definitely got better once Samsung did some updates, so I expect the same here, but just know that out of the box you might have to download some over-the-air updates before you can get a tablet that really moves snappily. Battery life on this is about 8.5 to 9 hours of continuous use, about a day and a half with heavy use. You can maybe get that to 2 days if you do battery saving or don't use it as much, but it's definitely acceptable battery life. What I won't show you because of the format here is the cameras, but I will say that the 8 megapixel camera on the back is not going to take stunning pictures, but what it can do is take pictures of text really well. So, well, not really well, but good enough for if you need to, say, take a picture of a document that you want to save into your notes. It's good enough for reading on the screen, scanning it to Google Drives. OCR might have a little trouble because the text is not going to be as crisp as it really should be. So, but it is good enough to capture that whiteboard, capture, a page of text that you need to just save for later but don't need to print. Overall, really like this tablet despite the performance issues. I feel like it definitely is worth the premium price if you are going to use the S Pen, because it does have a lot of great apps built into it that work with the S Pen. There are some other S Pen apps out there. So if you're going to use this pen, this is a really good tablet. It is definitely worth the $550 that you will pay for the 16 gigabyte version. However, if you're not going to use the pen, if that has no charms for you, then there are other tablets out there that have, you know, good and speedy performance, have the high-res display that looks really good. And that one is the Sony Xperia Zap Tablet Z. And that one, you know, at list price, it's $500, so it's $50 less. On Amazon right now, I think you can get it for something like $420, so that's a pretty good deal. So if you're not going to be using this pen, I would say you don't necessarily need to get this tablet, but this is the best pen-enabled tablet on the market right now, except for the Galaxy Note 8.0. And if you feel like 10 inches is too big for what you really want to do, if you want something that's more the size of a Moleskine notebook, say, the Galaxy Tab 8.0, or the Galaxy Note 8.0, sorry, is probably the one that you want. But this is the one that you want if you need something bigger. This is KT Bradford for Liliputing. You can check out my full review on liliputing.com.